Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Talk. Well, today's guest is a number one best-selling author. She is, let's see now, she's a teacher, a mentor, definitely a storyteller. There's just so much more. So that's just the beginning. Please welcome Ange Frymire. Welcome to the show, Ange.
Thank you. I have to apologize. The roofers are here today. I'm getting a new roof put on, and I just saw a bunch of stuff go falling from the window. Will
Well,
that make a difference?
not to me.
Okay. Doesn't make it to me either.
Okay,
It's all in the realm of home improvement, so I'm
absolutely. Yeah.
good.
And I
Yeah.
don't edit. I don't care about any of that stuff. To me, it's all
Okay.
just part of life.
Okay.
Now,
So I'm doing very, very great. And thank you very much, Nancy, for the opportunity for me to look at myself from someone else's eyes instead of my own.
thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. And thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I decided what happened is I just interviewed somebody before you, and after this interview, he said people can Google him. So I did that, and wow, I should have done that at the beginning. So I did that with you. Even though I have lots of information, I decided to Google your name, and it's really nice what comes up. You
Yeah.
know, and right
Yeah.
away it just talks about your book, A Woman of Worth.
Yes.
Right? So let's
Yeah.
start with that. How about we start with that?
Okay. Well, Woman of Worth, Christine Amran is the facilitator. She gathers writers. She's written, I think, about 10 books thus far, and she has them each write a story that follows her theme. And for the book that I did, the theme was find your moxie. And so I was very excited to do that because I'd participated in two other bestsellers as well. And what was very interesting, though, and this is where the vulnerability in a writer or in a person comes out. At that point, I had left my husband, and I had thought it would be a very gentle, loving divorce. Well, it wasn't.
Mm,
It started off that way, and then he started getting very angry, and then it became very, very, I would say, mean-spirited.
right,
And I started sinking into a depression that I wasn't even aware I was in. I am strong, hear me roar. That's how I usually am.
right.
And the depression knew no bounds of sinking lower and lower and lower. And of course, my mother had been depressed quite a bit when I was young, and I had swore I will never be like my mother in that way. So when I reread that story, which I do from time to time, I really see a lot of the signs of depression. And it's interesting though, because it was my soother to finding a way out. So, with depression or any ailment, you have to go through it to
Right,
get through it.
right.
And the writing became a huge part of myself, a huge part of my medicine, of my
Mhm.
my way of finding myself back. Now, it did take me another 2 years to get back to myself, but I love that even more because I can see where I struggled,
Mm,
where I tried to hide the struggle.
right.
After receiving 3 years of training as a therapeutic counselor, I no longer struggle to hide that, but back then I did. And it makes me, I'm going to say this, Nancy, makes me proud of myself that I was in my hole, decided to try and find some way out, and tried to mask to others the unconscious knowledge that I was in a depression.
Right, right.
And yeah, so there is a lot of joy for me in realizing some of the ways that I have developed to become a more whole person and to
Mhm.
become a better person, become a better version of my best self.
Mm. It's kind of interesting. One of the things you mentioned is like how certain things we take as a negative. So how you hide that, we feel we need to hide certain things from
Yeah.
the world. We don't want to, like I have social anxiety. And I used to make excuses when somebody invited me to somewhere rather than being honest about it, you know? And then you realize once you're honest about it, it's like, wow, why did I ever lie about it?
I love what you just said. I was in Clearmine International, which has now changed to Catherine and Dwayne O'Kane. Fabulous 3-year course on being a therapeutic counselor. And one of the first lessons I learned in my first year was, how are you doing today? I'm fine.
Right.
What does I'm fine mean? Well, I'm good. When they knew you weren't, and they taught us how to start with that vulnerability
Mhm.
and that authenticity. How are you doing today? I'm not doing so well. And I'm ready. Let's go for it. So
Yeah.
there are other ways of answering that still keep you poised and truthful without having to hide behind the shield of our social niceties.
Right. Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But let's move on from there because there's so much more about you, other than this. But you were also, you had founded, it says here, a boutique communications firm in 1992 and began teaching in 1995. So talk about the communications firm, first of all.
Okay, it's still ongoing. I figure Vocal Point Communications will be with me for the rest of my very long and loving life. So I was working in radio. I'd taken training at BCIT and I was very, very successful. And then one day I just decided I couldn't do it anymore. It's not the pressure of the job, it was the pressure of my family life, living out here, and my mom in Ontario, my dad in Ontario, blah, blah, blah. And so I left. I spoke to the general manager and I decided it was time for me to do something else. I had no idea what it was. 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I went, Focal Point, that will be the name of my new company. And thus I started my new company. I spent my hard-earned money on buying a big computer, those old PC computers that are this thick.
Yes.
And it worked out great. I got my first opportunity with a not-for-profit BC Country Music Association, which I had been highly involved with on the board of directors when I was at JR Country, the promotions manager for that radio station. And it just went from there. My first year, I made money. I was in the black, right, almost within 3 months rather than in the red, which is very usual. And it was inspiring because I'm okay working for other people, which as a contractor, you're often working for other people.
Mhm.
Yes, I was working with the media. So I had two bosses other than me. I had my client and the media. And it was thrilling. It was exciting. I was able to put together all of these stuff that I'd learned in my 3 years in radio to that point.
Mhm.
And I went further, and then I developed into marketing, and then I developed into from the media relations into public relations, and then crisis communications, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember one time I had been doing media relations mostly. That's what I became very well known as, a good publicist or a media relations expert. And someone called me and she said, yes, I want to talk with you because I heard you do incredible media relations. And I had never called it that. And I went, oh, is that what I do? And I said, okay, thank you. Where did you hear that? Oh, you just give the most amazing publicity. It's amazing. I didn't even know those words. I just knew what I did. So it was learning all the way around. And I did it until and I worked, some of my contracts were BCIT, Camosun, UVic, um, 1,000 clients throughout Western Canada and a couple in Australia.
Wow.
And then I moved to Victoria because I decided I need to live somewhere sunny when I retire. And I was only 50, so I wasn't going to be retiring for a long time. And I just met with the Jesse, who became my husband, and he was going to move there. And then he asked me to move back, and I had already, 2 years later, I'd given up all my contracts in Vancouver except for one, and I was doing a lot of work with UVic and Camosun College. So I moved back, and I thought, okay, I've given away all my clients except for one, so I'm just going to start up my company again. And I saw this ad for a part-time professor at KPU, Kwantlen Polytechnic University,
Okay.
which has 5 campuses throughout Metro Vancouver. And I applied for it because it was part-time, no problems. And I got my job at BCIT back. And, or no, I'd never left my job at my part-time
Okay.
teaching at BCIT. And I got hired, and halfway through the interview, I went, that's an odd question that they just asked me. That's a question for a full-time. No, no, no. And I had my job ad right there. I'm going through it going, yeah, no, no, this is part-time. And then they said they would let me know in a couple of weeks. And they actually called me 3 days later and said, we are hiring you full-time. And I'm on the phone, not a visual phone. I'm
Right.
like, so I took it, and then a few months later, I was talking to my buddy, Bob Basil, who is also an amazing professor. And he's going, I said, yeah, I thought this job was was part-time, and it was full-time. He went, ah, yes, we did. We made the error. We realized it. And we just thought, let's see what happens here. So then I had to let go of my job at BCIT, which I
Right.
have great respect for. And I loved the teaching. I loved it so much that even though we were writing intensive, but writing for business, not creative writing.
Okay.
And writing for business, as you know, can be very, very different than creative writing. It's
Yes.
not academic writing at all. And I often, many of us we would have many assignments, and throughout the year, I had 100 assignments per class, and
Oh,
I had 4 classes
wow.
each term. And so week 3 or week 4, all of a sudden you're spending 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week,
Mm.
marking, then 60, and sometimes it would get up to 100 hours a week. Not sustainable, but I loved it. I loved watching a student's eyes in week 5 or 6 go, they get it. They would get it. That made my heart really pump.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, now, many, many years later, after I'm retired, I've got someone at the door. It's probably the construction worker.
Oh no, go to the door. I'll just read some of the stuff from
Okay,
your page here for yes. So Ange's gonna answer her door, but there's she is a was a or still is, I think, freelance journalism. She's covered many print publications, including Vancouver Lifestyle magazine, Georgia Straight, Vancouver Sun, Common Ground, Vancouver Board of Trade, Nelson's What's On, Abbotsford News, Agriculture Digest. The list just goes on. And I'm going to mention her books. There's some top 10 bestseller from on Amazon. So one is her memoir, Women's Wellness. Sorry about that. Women's Wellness, Aging at Any Age, and then Embracing Your Mother-Daughter Roots. And that's 2 different stories. Okay, and the other one is Write Your Life. She's also done college text, Fundamentals of Public Relations and Marketing Communications in Canada. So what's the CP? Let me look at this. CPRS, that's a Canadian, what is that? I forgot where it is. I'll find it somewhere. But anyway, she became a mentor. She was named Mentor of the Year for them. She's was a chair of CPU Style Guide Committee of Business, Primary University Advisor Award of Enactus, Life Membership Award, Athol, and Athol oh my gosh, sorry peeps, Athol Murray College of Notre Dame of Canada. Okay, you're back. I'm just mispronouncing some words while you were gone. But I was just reading, so I don't know where you left off because I got involved in reading this, I was trying to, well, is it Athol Murray College? Is that how it's
Ethel
pronounced?
Murray College of Notre Dame, AKA Notre Dame.
Okay, so you,
That's what we call it.
a lifetime membership award you were given, right?
Yeah, I've been very involved with them. As a matter of fact, I was just hired last for International Women's Day of this year to give the young women at the college, which is grades 9 to 12, to
Okay.
give a storytelling workshop. And they have now started their first storytelling club
Mhm.
at Notre Dame. Yeah, it's very, very exciting. And these young women, they are brilliant and they love talking, and they latched on to the storytelling workshop. Yeah, it was awesome.
Isn't that nice when you have students like just lighten up when they're doing something that they enjoy or discovering, right?
It's so true. And that is one of the reasons, Nancy, why even though the work of a professor was unsustainable, which is why I ended up taking the therapeutic counseling course of 3 years, it's unsustainable to sanity. I just loved the teaching so much that I kept at it relentlessly. And now that I'm retired, living my full life, people say I'm busy, and I say, no, I am not busy. I am full. I'm full doing all the things that I have passion for. And I'm teaching creative writing to adults. I'm teaching a creative writing
Yeah,
circle.
yeah.
And I just got hired last week to teach creative writing to teens and tweenies, 9 to 14 years old.
Oh my. Oh,
Oh my gosh, it's just so exciting to be part of that platform where you're able to help people see
yeah,
things from a different perspective.
yeah. The young people, that must be really, really interesting, right? Because I
Oh
imagine
my gosh.
their imaginations are still so full, I guess the word is.
I want to tell you about something that happened on the first day. So the first day there, however, it was actually called summer intensive, but the kids knew it as the summer camp because it was a place for their parents to send them to while the parents were working, right? So there was this one young kid, I think he was about 11 years old. I could tell he was bright. He loved to talk, and then he came up to me. So the camp was from 9 until noon. And he came up to me about 10:30, just before we had the first break, and he went, "Ange, I'm really stuck. Look it, I've just got the name of the story, which was I Am a Cell Phone." That was the name of his story. But he had nothing else. So we sat at the front and I said, okay, I'm not going to say his name, but so I'm going to make his name up. Okay, Billy. And what do you want it to be? Okay, turn the page, write that down. And what do you want the phone to do? Oh, okay, turn the page back, write that. So he learned without realizing it
Right?
how to plot. As instead of being a pantster, he was plotting. And uh, at the end of the day, his dad came to pick him up and he said, "Not yet, Dad." And he called over and he said, "Look, I've only written one paragraph. I don't know what to say." And I said, "All right, let's go back." So I spent the next 15 minutes helping him, asking him questions about this cell phone that
Wow.
was alive. And he'd look and go, "Oh," and he turned the page back and write it down. And apparently he would not show it to his dad. And he came back the next day and he didn't want me to see it, but I looked at it a little bit. He'd now written about 3/4 of a page, but he'd written in the evening that night before. So that was great. And I was only there for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because I had another workshop in town in Vancouver. So I hired someone else. When I went to see him on Wednesday afternoon, he had the whole story. He had 7 or 8 pages at that point, and he was just brilliant. So I just said, "Billy, thank you so much. It was lovely getting to know you, and keep this up." Well, I just got an email. So that was last week. I just got an email from his mother saying, I almost said the little boy's name, Billy, wants you to have a copy of his story and wants to get some feedback on it. I have, what was it? 15 pages,
Wow.
11 pages of a story, handwritten, not typed,
Yeah.
handwritten by this young little boy. And I wrote back to his mother saying, I'll have it done by next Monday or Tuesday. And she wrote back going, he has now decided he wants to be an author. So having an opportunity to, that's what teaching is for me, to mentor the young minds. And these are really young minds. Oh my gosh, for me, there is very few things greater than being able to help them shape their own directions.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I think anytime, no matter what your take, when you have a teacher that is enthused about whatever it is they're teaching, like it is so wonderful for that person on the other end receiving that information, or
Yeah.
like if you think about the years you spent in school, the years I spent in school, I could maybe name two teachers that I really loved because of they were engaged in what they were doing. They were excited about teaching us, and
Yeah.
it just came through and it made us want to learn.
You know, I love that you went back to our early years. For me, grades 1 to 8, two teachers, only two.
Right.
However, when I went to this Notre Dame, it's a private school, my dad had gone there. Ange was getting in a little bit of teenage troubles, and mom and dad said, well, let's help her out. They asked me if I wanted to go to the school, so I never say I was sent there. I
Right.
chose to go. I went because I got to leave the home at 15, and I could finish school, which was my dream. All of the teachers at Notre Dame, all of them were fantastic.
Wow.
They were inspiring, they motivated. And it might be because it's a prairie town, and Wilcox, Saskatchewan is 30 miles south of Regina, and it's much of a more of a laissez-faire, lackadaisical environment.
Right.
And Frank Germain, who's now passed, right, may he rest in peace, would sometimes lean back, put his feet on the desk and say, all right, in English lit, let's see what you guys wrote today. Just beautiful. And I have stayed in contact with so many of the people. All of my teachers now are passed,
Right.
but not all of them, most of them. And yeah, education for me is so important, which is partly what my book is about. The book that I just finished a week ago. It's not, it's a novel, and it's based on some of my experiences. For instance, one of the protagonists, who actually is a closet antagonist, is the heroine, Larissa, her grandmother. And her grandmother, Etta, or Nana, is cantankerous, nasty, mean, and she's lived a very full life filled with a lot of trauma and challenges. But her heart will do anything for her granddaughter, Larissa. And I realized when I was starting this book, it was based on the worst memories of me with my mom. Now, my mom and I were not very close in my early to mid adulthood. And then one day, it's an amazing story. I'll tell you if you want, but there's no need to. One day, I heard my mom talking about her life as a young girl in a way I'd never heard it before. And I went, oh, I've never listened to my mother before. And I stuck my feet into the ground. I imagined big, thick metal hooks going deep to the middle of the earth so I couldn't get up and bolt. And I stayed there for 45 minutes until my mom finally went. I cleared my throat and my mom went, you're still here. And our relationship in that instant changed.
Wow.
And I fell in love with my mom. So with the book, having started that portion of Nana about my mom, it was a really hard piece to continue because I was so close with my mom. And I figured it out. A couple of years later, I'm good. But yeah, so as you probably know from many writers, some of the things that happen in our fiction books are because we've either experienced it
Yeah.
or we've witnessed it or we've heard about it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Wow. I was lost there. You know, and listening to you, I was lost there. Yeah, well, I want to also talk about your memoir, like the women's wellness, aging at any age.
Okay. Yeah. Um, uh, I've actually had the books here, so should have, show you the cover. Um, so that was the one that I did talk about where I was in the depression, right?
Oh, great. So yes,
Yeah, so the other one, Mothers and Daughters,
yes.
I wrote a story on my mom, and that story is the story that I just started to tell you, how I became best friends with my mom. We became so close, Nancy, that I wanted her to be my maid of honor.
Oh my
But my mom
goodness.
couldn't walk, and it would have been difficult because my
Right.
mom and dad were divorced and not doing things. But I want to tell you about the second story. So in this training for to become a therapeutic counselor, I took a workshop once, and it was a week-long workshop. And in one of the days, we had to leave Langley, where the workshop was at Springbrook,
Right.
and go downtown Vancouver. And we were asked to, they dropped us off in Pigeon Park, and they asked us to go to some place that we either had never been to before or were afraid of going. So
Mm,
for me, Pigeon Park was one of those places. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Pigeon Park, but it's a very small cement um, um, uh, uh, park on the corner of Hastings and Abbott, or Hastings and Powell. I can't remember. And it's completely occupied by homeless people.
okay.
So I went there. A few others did as well. And I sat down and I just thought, I'm just going to observe. And I saw this woman selling cigarette, an older woman close to my age, perhaps,
Hmm.
selling cigarettes to all the guys, and they'd come up and they clearly respected her. And they would come up and say, "Hey, mama, I need 4 cigarettes." So she'd pull up 4 cigarettes and they'd pay her money. And I was sitting beside this young woman of 19, 20, 21, and I started talking to her, and I noticed that this woman selling the cigarettes kept looking at this woman. So this woman opened up a little bit, and I said, "Do you know her?" And she went in great embarrassment, the teen.
Yeah.
"She's my mother." So this young woman had left home, gotten into a bad relationship, ended up on the street. Her mother had spent months looking for her, finally found her by chance
Mm,
at this park, quit her job, and showed up in a safety vest,
right.
and started so that she can keep an eye on her daughter, who was
Mm,
highly involved in drugs and,
right. Wow.
yeah, the
Unbelievable.
whole shebang, right?
Yeah. Wow.
I was just intrigued. And this young woman,
Wow.
she opened up so fully to me. I stayed there for an hour and a half. We
Mm,
had 8 hours to do our thing for the day on this task we were set out to do. So
right.
I spent a couple hours there, and then I left. I went, "Oh, I better get on with my day." And towards the end of the day, I came back to see if that young woman was there. She wasn't, but her mother was. So I went over and I talked to her mother, and I said, "You know, I'm writing a book right now on the relationship. I'm writing a story for a book on the relationship between mother and daughter. Would I be able to do something on you?" And she went, "Absolutely." So we set up a time for me to go back and interview her,
Right.
which I did about 4 or 5 days later. But I first of all had to get permission from the editor, Rebecca Harrison, and she loved the idea. So the second story in that book, Mothers and Daughters, Their Relationships, is about this mother-daughter relationship.
Wow.
Now, unfortunately, the about a half a year later, I went by the park and I saw the mother
Right.
still there. And so I decided within a week that I was going to go back and do a follow-up interview,
Mhm.
they had both disappeared.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to end there because I'm looking, sorry, I keep looking up, but it shows the time, how much time we have left, you know?
Oh
But,
my gosh, and I've got so much more to say.
well, my thought is, let's do this again. We're just gonna rebook another interview.
Okay.
But let me
We'll
just finish
we'll
this one
arrange all
first,
that. Okay,
okay?
sure.
And just stay on camera. And to the audience, yeah, you've been listening to Ange Frymire. We're definitely going to be doing this again because, again, she has so much more to share, which makes me very excited. Anyway, in the meantime, everybody, thank you so much for watching the show. Tune in for the next time and take care and peace out, folks. Find the off button, Nancy.
Bye, Nancy.
Okay, so I'm going to message you. We'll set up another interview for August if that works for you. Or
Yes.
I have a couple of spots at the end of August. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. It was lovely.
Thank.
And I need to find out more on where I'd find your podcast and stuff. So when I send you the date, I'll send you my questions on that.
Okay.
And I'm very, very grateful to have met you.
Me too. I feel the same. Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon. All
You
right.
bet.
Bye for
Bye-bye.
now.